Hello everyone. So it's been about a decade since I did a stream, so I thought it's about time I did an update. I've been doing updates in my channel for those people who follow me. I've changed my computer setup slightly, so now my face is super dark in the video, but I don't have posh Instagram cameras and things like that, so we're just going to put up with it for the moment. Also, I'm smoking, so you have to put up with that for a moment as well. I'll try and do a relatively quick video because I'm still fairly indecisive and not much has changed since channel updates anyway. Then I can at least do more detail once I've kind of done the overall where we are situation. So Bitcoin, obviously we know we're in a big uptrend. We've had this large bull flag which has been created. We had this zone in the red box that I was looking at, and we had the deviation below that, the reclaim of the zone, lefts and stops behind there, which I thought we were going to go back for, so unfortunately I didn't manage to sort of leap in at this point, but I'm not that fussed because, as I said in the channel as well, I'd rather play alts at this point. So since then, we've obviously had the big pump on Ether as well, which is kind of what took most of this up. We've got a 2-week supply in here, so I had previously alerts like at the start of the 2-week, then on this daily, I think maybe 2-day inside there, and then this question mark alert that I had from ages ago at the top that never got tested because there was a small hourly zone up here that didn't get tested, and even so some stops above that actually, but it did manage to stay within the zone. So we have had a retracement in this area, but we're still holding this 2-week zone. On top of that, let me just turn off my mess for a moment. We closed the 3-week above, and you can see that that is holding a support. So I hadn't wanted to, so I wanted to show the 2-week first. So it's difficult because we are in 2-week supply. Hide my stuff. So we've got this zone, this green candle, which is a 2-week supply, which is what I was looking for a short from. But once the 3-week close, it's closed above, and it could potentially flip that level of support. So on that basis, I'm now just going to delete this blue box for the moment, and I'm going to change this line to a 3-week. So it's a week 3-week demand, and we have seen many week 3 weeks fail, but it's still a demand, and therefore I still want to have it in, because that is what's been holding price for the last few days, or that same level, whether you want to call it a 2-week level or a 3-week demand, that's up to you. So that's this black line here, which is the 3-week demand level, or the 2-week supply level at the bottom of that candle, which is now just about holding a support with a little bit of a wick through it. I've also said in previous updates that while we've created this weekly demand down here, and then we also had an untested 12-hour down here with, which is what I wanted to, those trendline stops to get taken, and a CME gap, possibly a little bit lower on the CME gap, and then we created this weekly above. So we've now got 2 levels in between, which is promising. However, again, what I've always said is, like, once we have a breakout on Bitcoin, we don't tend to like to retrace. So I think if we do come down into here while it is a weekly, at this point we're probably going to end up making a weekly supply, I would think. No, maybe not at this point, but if we do come down into here, it's probably going to take longer, unless we have a very quick wick for reason of news or something like that. It's possible, but if we do sort of drift down into here, it's probably going to extend out in the consolidation, I would think. Given now we're holding this level here, like really price wants to continue holding that level. That's on the very high time frame. On the lower time frames, I've actually been short biased because, like I said, we hit this zone, the larger zone that I wanted. So therefore I look for short bias. On top of that, we're at the top of this channel. We are also obviously fighting this sort of all-time high breakout from 2022. I'm fighting around that level, which is this red line. But yeah, for me, I'm not going to look for macro longs at the top of a range, like if either you got in down here or you didn't. Yeah. Having said that, I'm calling in both directions, so I did call it along yesterday on the 3-week demand, and it did come back down, or then maybe the day before yesterday was the first hit, and then it did come down a little bit deeper, and now we're potentially forming this bottom here. On the supply side, however, we did also make 3-day supply source. So the day before yesterday, we made a daily supply. So I was short biased for that yesterday's candle. That was fairly obvious. And then as of the close yesterday, we then made a 3-day supply. Still a weak supply, and all of these are weak supply and demand. But that doesn't mean you should disregard them. So again, I have been short biased in here, and then I'll show you the detailed chart. So here, some of the entries that I've had recently. That's the 3-week level that I had and the point of control from the day before yesterday, and then as of last night I had this 4-hour, 12-hour zone alerted, which we're now still inside, but obviously we've come up higher into, and so that initial one didn't break the low but came very close, so we are clearly holding this support here at 67, and now we're pushing back up inside. Another possibility of a short here in a 4-hour. It's fairly messy and a large one, so I don't love it. And then obviously we left a double top up here, so we could just go for those stops into this untested 4-hour at the top. So those are the two sort of potential scalp entries I'm looking at. I did have a little disclaimer on, I thought I had another entry in here, that there is also an hourly untested at the top here. So 3 possible zones I'll be looking at. This one, but obviously, so remember the arrow is at the start of the zone, so this one basically covers that whole area. So it's messy, but it is the 61 fib. Then we've got, like I say, this hourly untested at the top here, and then we also had a CME gap up here. So again, worth considering. Not sure why there was a CME gap there. Maybe I'll double check that just in case I'm going crazy, because this is on Monday, so there shouldn't really have been a CME gap up there. Or maybe, you know, I think if it fell, yeah, I guess if it fell at 9 o'clock when CME was closed, there'll be a gap in here somewhere. So it could go up higher, tap that, and then again the 4 hours. So those are the kind of the lower time frame short possibilities. So that's that 4-hour, and then the hourly will be in the middle of these two. But again, the macro trend is up, and we do have this possible 3-week demand level. So these are scalps until proven otherwise. We do have the 3-day supply, so there is support for taking a scalp short there. And then below, again, I've been sort of reticent on longs, like while we hold this daily demand, we're still good from a daily perspective, and we are still holding it. So, you know, it can come down here and test again, and we'll see this sort of similar to what's happening on Ether. Yeah, again, still holding a daily uptrend, but just starting to make a bit of supply that makes it worth considering shorts. I think there's some other things on the totals as well. I should have a quick look at the totals. But yeah, so those are the zones I'm interested in if we come back down. If we get the, if we come down or if we go up, if we get the breakout, again, I'm still looking, I've commented on this before, so I did have this measured differently previously because I thought we might come up from here. So this is the 113 to 127, it's the failed wave if we get a push up. So it's a possibility, obviously, you know, there's people who are projecting 100k and things like that. I haven't really done any upper projections, so apparently I had a log level up there at 108. I feel like that might have been from 2021 though, so I probably need to look at that again. But I might have a look at some stage at what the 161 would come out as for various waves, but I haven't really done that. Then initially I would just be looking for the possibility of a failed breakout into the 76 to 78 area. And if you're going to look at that, obviously you're looking at price action in that zone. There's nothing there, there's nothing to the left, so we'll see. But yeah, this zone, potentially short scalps here, and then if they break structure, great. Potential long. So again, I've alerted the weekly. I have an alert on the weekly just here, but daily demand inside that. But again, I'm just nervous of this trend line as well, so just need to see what happens when and if the zones get hit. You know, we trade when the zones are hit, and when we see price action inside, that gives us a sense of that we're going to get a reversal. So that's that. The other reason I was slightly more bearish on BTC was US dollar tethered dominance chart. So again, like this has been my analysis for a long time, like it just took a long time to play out, but we hit this 6-month zone here. So go down, if you look at the 6-month chart, we are in 2 stacked 6 months, which again is not ideal. We have come down deeper into it, and we might come down even to the top of this here, because if you get stacked zones like this, quite often we'll come to the lower one. But again, just looking for the signs of reversal, given we are now in this very high time frame zone, which you really can't see on this chart, but so this big brown zone, looking for those signs of reversal. Big gap if it was to go back up to the 3-month supply from there, but there's various things in between. So what's happened so far is we got the bounce, which is obviously where Bitcoin found its top, and bounce came up into 5-day supply here. I was hoping again for a push into here, and I'm still hoping for that. And if we get that, then obviously we're going to get the bigger drop on Bitcoin. So be wary. We have a weekly demand here, but this did get an immediate test into that. So again, this current move could go a touch lower and thus have Bitcoin go a touch higher. But I think for a lot of people would be trading this long if they saw this chart in isolation, and I feel like there's not many people looking at it. And you know, perhaps I'm wrong. Like I did ask a couple of people the other day, and someone said, well, they saw a bear flag. So yes, that's still possible. It is still possible. We are still waiting for we've got one wave up, second wave up, and we need, you know, just to see this start continuing. And this is a weekly chart, so potentially it could take ages, or we need to see, like, you know, that big move that we've had in previous reversals. But you can see back here in 2021, for example, you know, it took multiple weeks, to end of December 2020 to May 2021 before it actually moved. And the other point of reference I've been using, and particularly on Ether, is this 2019 top, because this was the top after so we had the 2017 bull run, and then we had the 3-year bear market, and then this was the interim top before the next bull run in 2021. So I'm kind of interested as to like how price mimics this type of area. So this was a bit of a quicker move, that took a lot longer for the reversal. But again, we are seeing those, you know, you're seeing those signs, and we've had that test. But again, we've got some indecision, you know, and it's obviously it matches Bitcoin in the inverse, so we have indecision in that we've now got this weekly supply at the highs, like Bitcoin has the weekly demand. It's a weak supply at the moment, unless it breaks the lows. But so when we do come back up into here, I'd expect a retracement. But again, if I was being bullish on this and i.e. bearish on the crypto market, then I would expect this to come up into here, and some consolidation before a move up, although that is obviously entirely possible if it wants to. But for the moment, we haven't come down into this weekly, but we've come down into a 5-day demand. So again, decent place for a bounce, hence we're seeing the retracement on Bitcoin. And I'd like to see this do a little bit of a move up. On the 3-day, again, like in the inverse of Bitcoin, we made a 3-day, weak 3-day demand, which we're testing today. And then a daily inside it, which is the low of today, has just tapped that. So again, just looking to see if this is going to build momentum for a move up here, and that will then coincide with Bitcoin building momentum for a move down. Korea isn't giving me much difference, so I normally look for confidence on Korea if I'm less sure, but it's not really giving me much difference. The only thing on Korea is it was much more bearish on the up move, whereas Bitcoin's gone quite high into that 2-week supply. If the Korea pair is still at the bottom of the 2-week supply, there's no flip to 3-week demand, and in fact there's no weekly demand below either. So that kind of gives support to the fact that if this comes down, it could potentially come down into this daily zone here, which might coincide with the daily zone here. Similarly, it made a 3-day supply and then also a daily inside it a bit higher, so it's tapping that now. CME also is not giving me a great deal of help either. So it also has so with the 3 week, the 3 week's tough just because of the candles. Obviously, it's just a mess here. So 3 week I would put down here at the bottom of on the top of this red candle, but it is potentially holding support on top of there. 2 week supply is similar to the US dollar pair. This is the 2 week supply, and we're still in it, but again quite high in it. And then weekly demand, so I'll put my lines back, so that would be the 3 week if we come down, and then the weekly potentially on top of that candle, but it's quite messy, so again doesn't add much. On top of that, so we didn't have the 3 day supply, but on top of that we had a contract changeover yesterday, which then messed it up even more. So, and I'm still toying whether I want to use the adjusted data for this chart rather than the unadjusted data. So the adjusted data basically takes account of the gap. So if I go down to the lower time frame, you can see, so here the market closed yesterday, contract changeover, and it opened up there. And the reason I have the two blue lines is we made a daily supply. So you can see the daily supply on the unadjusted chart, but if we go to the adjusted chart, it's higher. In addition, we have the other problem that if it leaves a gap for the contract changeover, so again that was where it happened on the adjusted chart, so there's no gap, or if there was a gap it's been closed. But again, if we use the unadjusted chart, it could still potentially close the gap down to here. So again, I'm quite unsure, and whether it's, you know, the problem is, while I don't really care too much about the gap and the adjusted gap, there is data that can help. If I'm unsure on the US dollar, or just looking for confluence when I'm unsure if there's multiple levels on the US dollar pair. You see we made a 4 hour demand here and it's holding it. The other thing is we have a gap up here, and again that was what I mentioned with the US dollar pair, like that higher level. If we're going up to close this gap, and again it's there on the unadjusted chart, but the adjusted chart is higher, 71,000. But again, we've got a relative difference now between this and the US dollar chart, so it all just becomes a bit confusing, so I don't want to add too much on that. But looking now, so we've got the close 68,703 on the US dollar pair, and on the CME pair 69,395, so we've got another $700 premium on the CME pair, which we didn't have yesterday, so again it just makes it slightly more complex. But yeah, again, anyway, watch where we're at when those gaps close, and if we start getting a rejection there. We've also got some wicks here, so I'm expecting obviously CME is likely to take out these wicks, if nothing else, which I assume exist on the adjusted. Oh no, okay, so that's just on the adjusted chart, and again the unadjusted chart, we've already gone through them. So again, it just becomes, I need to pick one and just stick to it, I think. Anyway, that's Bitcoin, so I've given you the levels that I'm interested in. Quick recap, 4 hour here, 1 hour just above that if we get an extra push, and if the CME gap fills. I mean, it looks kind of ridiculous on this chart, but this, bear in mind when I'm giving these levels, I'm saying very low time frame, so these are not trades you should be taking for, you know, macro shorts. They're just zones to watch for low time frame scalps, and then it's all highly dependent on what's below, what demand's been made. You know, are we going to flip this 3 day supply back to demand? Are we going to flip a daily, you know, if we close above here, are we going to get a daily demand? You know, you need to make all those decisions. So these are just low time frame entries. High time frame traders, you're looking ideally for a retracement into this weekly, and or whether we get a breakout into there, possibly for shorts, but that, I mean, this is very, very tentative. Okay, how do I manage to talk for 20 minutes inadvertently when I meant to try to be quick? Okay, Ether, I will be much quicker on Ether because it's much more challenging. So, well, the key things I'm waiting for on Ether. So Ether, we made a 3 week demand here, more firmly than Bitcoin, but again, not over that wick, so still not that strong. The main thing with Ether is, as of tomorrow, are we going to make a monthly? So if we make that as a monthly demand, then I expect to see a bigger push on this, and that's really interesting and what I'll be looking at. Beyond that, we've got a weekly demand, well that's the 3 weekly, apologies, that's the 3 weekly in the big blue here. And then we've got this giant candle, so then it just makes it incredibly hard to choose, you know, like I don't really want to kind of go, oh, just long in here somewhere, because you're talking a $600 range, which is just crazy. At the moment we're holding this circled zone I drew earlier, just in discussion with somebody. This is an 8-hour demand, that's what we're holding as support. And again, I put in my low time frame entries, but this is obviously bullish. At this stage, there's nothing really that makes you want to short. It's holding, and we've got a 2-day demand that we're holding, and nothing that makes you want to short beyond scalps at this stage. Scalps with hope. We've got some wicks down here. We did take out the low, but again, it could come back to take out the low. We've got a yearly level and there's possible monthly level, so we're really looking at holding here. If we don't hold there, we start breaking down from there, then I'm more concerned, but then we've got this big 3-week right below. So again, from a scalp perspective, I put an entry here because it's 61 fib, and there's a 5-minute zone here that's at the top of the first impulse up before it starts chopping its way up the rest of it. If you look at the very low time frames, it's 5 minutes, so I put it there more just for interest factor, and then the alert's just above for this 3-week level. So again, you just watch this if we're coming to the 3-week level. 61 fib just from that giant candle and the up move. So, but the actual 61 fib for the entire move is lower. So again, take this one with a bit of a pinch of salt, but it's just, I put things just like for my own observation as well. Then down here we've got a daily, we've got an untested daily right below it. So I did put, there's a level there that shouldn't be there. I did put comments in the channel about looking at this daily for holding this for a buy. Then this one again, but this one didn't get the test, so again that's why I've just kept my alert here for the lower one, just because it didn't test into it last time. Doesn't mean it has to, could hold the higher one. It's better fibs anyway, but that's a big if. We come back down here and then we'll look at price action when we do. At the upside again, like I was looking for shorts, I think, I can't remember what this is now, this first one might have been a 12-hour supply, no, 8 hours, so there was an 8-hour untested supply here, so that was the sort of aggressive first entry, which got some wicks maybe just below the level, then pushed up into it, and then pushed up finally into this 12-hour, and then I actually had a daily just above, which it just missed on the test. Similarly at the lows, like I was watching this come down yesterday, I was saying we probably might take out that low because CME had a gap to be filled under there. We've come a bit lower, but then with my next alert I had back down by this annual level and a point of control, but again it's slightly front run that. So again, you can still look at this if it comes down again a bit lower, but we have now flipped an 8-hour demand in there, so it's possible that we get more of a move up. On the short side, while these don't look horrendous, why I might need to update this chart. So we've got a 12-hour supply at the top here, so I do have an alert in there. I think I might not have refreshed this chart. I feel like that's an old alert. Or I've got different alerts because I ran out. Okay, anyway, so we've got a 12-hour supply there and an 8-hour supply here. This 8 hours already been tested, but there's another 4-hour on the lower time frame. So again, these are possible short entries to look at if we come back. However, I have put the disclaimer on these in the premium channel that they excuse me, trying to get my OCD. Yeah, I put a disclaimer on these in the channel that because we've got so much chop on the way down that it's very possible it can squeeze these if it wants to. You know, these shouldn't be limit orders, but just kind of watch the 12-hour zone when it comes into it, watch the 8-hour zone when it comes into it. And that's just the low time frame ones, and then again obviously we're in this sort of bigger uptrend. If we do hold here, then I probably expect us to get up to the 4K area. And yeah, you should be look for longs if we get another drop down into here, or if we start to get some better structure through here. There's a 3-day supply and then a weekly supply in here, so those would be the net zones that I'd be looking for the possibility of shorts. That's the next supply above. And yeah, what else? Actually, now I come to think of it, so we've got a similar situation here where we had a 3-day demand. Which we just took some wicks through, so yeah, that's also a decent entry for the re-entry for a reclaim of that if we get the retest. Big if, and again, when we go up this much, we don't really want to be retracing such a massive amount of it to come all the way back down here, because then we're just going to be forming some larger range and probably have more of an extended sideways move before any break higher. I believe the ETFs have been approved, so I don't necessarily think that should cause another pump now, but maybe I'm wrong. I thought they had all been approved, but then we're still holding regardless, so I need to find some data. I should also say, actually, so the data on so this farside.co.uk is this website that gives the data on Bitcoin ETFs. I don't know if we've got some equivalent on Ether now. So throughout some of this up run, we have had more buying coming in. So you can see for the last, since the 15th of May, 24th of May, these are all very positive buying. But then in the last couple of days, we had a bit more selling from Grayscale, offset on the 28th by buying from BlackRock, and then not much either way yesterday, but again, hence the sideways sort of slight drift of death that we have. So we do seem to be fairly driven by ETF buying or selling. Problem is we don't know this till after the fact. But I quite like to get similar data for Ether. That would be a nice nice addition to see if ETF buying is driving price moves there. But anyway, these are so local scalps in the range, overall trend up, holding this 8-hour good, allowed a wick below, but that's it. But even if we get the wick below, then we're just going to fall straight into this 3-week demand. So still very bullish on both of these, more so if we can make that monthly demand up there. And even if it makes the monthly, like, it doesn't necessarily say it's going to hold a support, although I would expect to get at least a bounce off it on the close. But we can also fall a lot deeper into the monthly demand, but I would still like to see it hold the initial bounce off the top. That's what commonly happens if price is very bullish. Okay, so that's those two. Oh yeah, just on so CME, I had the same issue with Ether, like the contract changeover, like really messed with the data. We did eventually come down on that wick, even despite the adjusted chart. So sorry, hold on these. So the adjusted, you can see the close down here, and then it reopened up here with the adjustment. Again, we have the two different daily levels. But even with that, we came back down and filled the adjustment gap and then the gap from the unadjusted chart from previously. Again, more of the challenge. So the adjusted chart had the gap. This gap would have been higher, but either way, it's still filled. So while I was thinking I should change the data, if this has actually bounced off exactly where I had the level, even though it's no longer really a level if I look at the adjusted chart, hence I'm torn. Similarly, we've got this CME close up here on the adjusted chart and higher on the unadjusted chart. Sorry, higher on the adjusted chart than the unadjusted chart, but again, we might get a run up into those levels. Let me look at the low time frame again quickly. Not sure whether it's worth continuing. I'll continue and I'll just hope for the best. Okay, so one final thing I think on ETHBTC. So again, like I'm again a bit torn. So on this, we had that another huge bounce off this 2-day demand in here on the Ether dominance chart, which was something I commented on in the channel. I'll quickly bring that up. The Ether dominance chart hit monthly level down here, and it was a monthly that had already been tested over here, but it hit a monthly, so again, it's not necessarily a surprise. So I commented that we could get some sort of a bounce there. Didn't really expect it to be this big a bounce, but it is what it is. So back to ETHBTC chart. So as you know, I've wanted lower on this. We have had this massive bounce, but we are still in monthly supply. So again, huge bounce, sure. Looking now really for if this monthly, I mean, it's a messy monthly supply, it's a 2-month and a monthly. and then we went into the weekly at the top of that. But again, we're looking to see tomorrow if we're going to flip this monthly level. So while it seems like a very strong bounce, we've still got a 2-day demand, you know, somewhat much resembles the US dollar chart. We are still in this possible broadening wedge. We haven't quite come out again of this trend line. We've had wicks out of that trend line before, and we've had a wick out again, but it hasn't really fully broken and stayed out of there yet. So again, I'm still on the fence as to whether we are mimicking this pattern. So anyone who's followed me knows I've mentioned this multiple times. So we had this broadening wedge here. We had a big pump, failed to get higher, failed to break supply, came back down, had a big pump again, or had a mid pump and then another big pump, but again failed to break supply. And it really is relatively similar to this. We had already had sort of 2 big pumps on this, so I kind of thought maybe it was done, and when we started to drop there, but it's picked up support again. Could be completely wrong, doesn't have to completely follow that, but in an ideal world I really would like ETHBTC to be down on this monthly demand before I want to be super bullish on it. Again, the other thing we need to see if I'm going to be super bullish is for it to make and hold demand. So even after this, we had a lot of people who were saying like they wanted to be bullish after that. We had made a weekly demand here and came down into it, pumped again, but was unable to break the high. So again, here we haven't even really got a decent weekly. We're potentially going to get a 2 weekly down here, which is going to be a better zone than the one was made there. So again, if we make this, if we can hold up here until the end of the week, we make this 2 weekly demand. What I'd like to see is this come down and then hold for a test, and or hold up here and start to give me structure up here. But so far, while it's made a week 2-day demand, and it's just dipping down into that. But this is not really enough for me to kind of go, yes, we're in an uptrend now. And particularly because we're in this weekly monthly supply on the macro. So yeah, we've got a 4-hour down here, and then we've got this weekly down here with the daily at the bottom, so we don't really want to retrace the whole of it. But again, looking back at, don't be surprised if we do, I guess is my point, because you can absolutely guarantee that when the similar happened here, then everybody would have been super bullish. But then yeah, and it went sideways for, when's that, May to June, so over like a few weeks, but then it did ultimately come back down again and didn't hold support there. Probably didn't make a weekly demand like we're going to have now, and we, like I said, we may get a monthly, so that's worth considering. But yeah, don't be surprised if we still get this drop after this pump. So he's starting to come down already, but again, still a long way off, still high up, and still hasn't broken any sort of support yet. What else? Okay, yeah, so that's pretty much all of it on Ether and Bitcoin. So yeah, bullish, but at resistance. The TLDR version is bullish, but everything's at resistance. Looking for shorts on the basis we're at resistance. Warily, scalps unless you really want to hold a bit, hold with stops quickly to break even, and then look for longs if you can, if you get decent setups, and or if you're willing to just trade the higher time frames and use the support that we have up here. So this 2-day, use that and say, right, if the 2-day breaks, you'll close. But for now, until this 2-day breaks, then you can do that for the long side as well. For me, I just look for the tighter entries, so hence waiting for better entries, and I might consider an entry on that 8-hour demand as well. Now it's made that on the career pair as well. Yeah. Okay, one more thing. So quick run through of the totals, I guess, just because I haven't looked at them for a day or so. So I mean, it really, the total is very similar to Bitcoin. Total 2 is very similar to Ether. So we've got this 2-week supply. Also closed just above, making that a 3-week, but came down a little bit lower inside it, or below it. Weekly demand down here, so really nothing. 2-day, I think we haven't got that 2-day on Bitcoin. That's interesting. So total is going to give us We have the 2-day on Bitcoin, but it's just a little bit higher, so it's already been tested versus on total it's lower. So it could be interesting to look at where the market is when total tests this 2-day, you know, because that probably isn't going to mean Bitcoin going all the way down to the weekly. But that's looking a little bit more solid. I mean, it still has a 3-day supply, but weekly. Week as in W-E-A-K, not weekly. A week 3-day supply. So that's total 2 also has a 3-day supply, also potentially rejecting it. So yeah, I mean, all of these really are saying to me that I just don't really want to be longing into this 3-day supply. And it's entirely up to you whether you choose to acknowledge the fact it's a week 3-day supply and trade long into it at your leisure. But for me, yeah, it's not solid enough to kind of go, right, I'm going to long up here at resistance. Also in 2-week supply, prefer it to come down into the weekly demand on total 2. And again, that's obviously going to mean Ether coming back down. So yeah, we're still kind of looking at potentially this making some sort of a larger triangle, I guess. Broken this triangle, actually. I guess we are holding support on the top of that triangle, on the top of this as a breakout, which is interesting. But I guess on the other, I can just see Bitcoin moving up out of the corner of my eye, so it's just hit my 4-hour supply alert, so I can see what happens now while I'm on stream. But yeah, so I'd like to see this start moving up and consolidating back inside this 3-day supply before thinking this is going to do another decent up move. Probably the same for total. Yeah, we've got a daily supply in there and then the 3-day, but that's looking a bit more solid. Total 3 and others I think was slightly more dubious, but then also has this demand closer, so no 3-day supply. My reticence with these, which I was commenting in the group the other day, was more that they hadn't quite. So we've had so you'll see a mix when we look at all the alts. We see a real mix. We see some that are just consolidating here, and that'll cover most of the majors. We see some that have just gone straight through, not many. And then we see quite a lot that are just like this and just sort of thinking about things here. And that's been my challenge as well, that we've had this up move, we've got a retracement into support, and like most alts, this is a bit floaty, but most alts have hit like a weekly or a monthly demand at the low there. Then most of them also had this weekly supply here. So we are going to get a mix, but again, we've got options now of the correction that either we go up into here and drop down and make a sort of a larger flag or triangle correction, flag correction, or we're going to do this and make triangle corrections. And again, with the potential move, so that being the potential move from there, or this being the potential move if we get the flag and the extra move down. But for the most part, I have been alerting shorts in this area, which you would have seen on the majors at least, some of which have come up there, but like a lot of the majors haven't even got past this zone, and my more aggressive shorts in the local range. But as you can see from the total 3 chart, that we haven't quite hit this weekly, we've hit a 5-day. So again, a lot of the alts have this similar, boxes keep coming back again, have a similar sort of structure here, that we've got a 5-day, we've got a 4-day just underneath it, we've got a 5-day higher and then the weekly higher. So again, we're getting a mix of whether they're rejecting this 4-5-day or rejecting the weekly a bit higher. And then in many cases we have this weekly demand below, which we just need to simply see if it's going to hold and have another push up. What was the other? I think the other observation I was making, I'm not sure if it was on this chart, but again, we can see just here, so it's sort of similar. We've had this retracement, and then it's just like, are we gonna push for yet another high, or is it the breakdown now? The major difference here, well, here we were trying to make a new all-time high, which we did and then rejected, but the major difference is the supply structure. So we do have this monthly supply structure to the left, so hence I am more short biased because we've got supply, and we see that on a lot of the alts. So, and the alts are very variable. The older ones, which do have more supply, are the ones that are being shown typically as being weaker. And then others which don't have much here, or just have dailies or weeklies from back in 2021, are the ones that are running through Yeah, just in a very indecisive point here, at a very indecisive point. Others, which excludes the top 10, similar scenario. Again, hasn't quite hit these zones, so I'm still, yeah, like I say, I'm still a little bit torn, thinking that potentially we could have at least another wave, if not, you know, a big push up, but at least another wave into proper supply here. But, you know, there's arguments again, you know, there is a level there. So perhaps it's just going to reject early, like it doesn't have to go into supply, that's just my preference. Again, weekly demand, so again, competing things at the lows. We've got a weekly demand now, which we're testing, so it could get another push up. But then on many alts, we're now building these trend line stops under here, which makes me a little bit nervous that we are going to get that bigger drop down. And for those alts that haven't hit monthly demand, and there are some, and all which need to want to test this low a bit better than the second wick, that we are going to get that drop, a follow-up drop. But now it's very much the moment of truth, like we're on this weekly demand, and I need to see, you know, so is this, are the new supply, so it's made a 3-day, it's kind of made a bit of a dubious 3-day in there. Let me have a look. So yeah, it's got a 2-day supply in there, but again, still in demand. So just very weak corrective moves on a lot of these alts right now, and I'm just not overly bullish, like some people are, like some of the meme coins are moving and things like that, and there's nothing wrong with taking longs and just seeing what they'll do. We got some nice longs yesterday on NOT, being the flavour of the month. So, let's double check my Telegram, see if anybody's watching. Don't think they are, so I can't get anybody to check me, but let's hope this is still streaming appropriately. Anyway, so that's others. So yeah, like I say, just at that indecision, we need to see now if we're going to hold this, and we're potentially going to get a bigger move on the alts, that it's either going to go up into these 4-5 day weekly, or potentially take out the high and just do another wave. You know, from a wave perspective, we have had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 waves. Or even 5 if you count from there. I'm an Elliott wave person, but if we've had 5, we tend to look for the bigger correction. We don't tend to look for another push. If we do get another push, it's very possible it's just going to reject in this area. Maybe take out the high, but I don't expect it to be a particularly big push without a bigger consolidation. DeFi was looking significantly weaker after the drop, but has also made a comeback, but also is back up into that weekly supply. Bitcoin dominance was looking kind of weaker, and actually thought might create a new monthly supply, but it needs to close below here for the monthly supply, and it's now obviously got to bounce back up into, still holding all the demand, but it's got choppy. 2 months demand there, it's still holding, but it's got choppy. You'll still see a move back up into here, into the daily supply, but it's that, yeah, so it's, the things to keep an eye on really are US dollar dominance. Here, if this holds, we really want this to hold if we're bearish on Bitcoin. If this starts to kind of come back down into here, then we can look for the weekly, and where Bitcoin is when this hits the weekly demand below, or even that daily, just a little bit lower. But just be a little bit careful at this point, because if this holds, then we're going to get that bigger move, and then we should get the bigger drop on Bitcoin. I think that's about it really. The only other things to comment on, I guess, are stocks. We do seem to be picking up a bit of correlation. Luckily for Bitcoin, Nasdaq and the S&P haven't corrected that much. We've got much bigger corrections on all the other indices, including the Dow, which is the US 30. We are getting big bounces today on everything else, but not on the US. Well, on the US small caps, but not on the US S&P, Nasdaq and Dow as yet. We had GDP announcement, which had very little effect on price. But yeah, so S&P now has a 2-day supply in there, as does the Dow. Nasdaq's still holding. Yeah, it's just starting to look a little bit more ropey, but it is still holding demand for now, just on a higher low there. I've sort of started to put slightly more aggressive shorts in, but tentatively because we're still holding an upward structure. But the last one did work okay, and then I've added the new one up here. But given, yeah, Bitcoin is starting to follow this a bit more, just be a little bit wary. You know, everything does have very high time frame demand below, but that doesn't mean it's not going to dip. Like, this has got a weekly demand there. NASDAQ the same, but it doesn't mean it's not going to come very deeply into it if it wants to. And if we do get those big drops on the indices, then I have no doubt that Bitcoin's probably going to join in. Similarly, the dollar, I'm just indecisive again. Sorry, I can't be more helpful with this kind of stuff. I want to see where the monthly closes are, and for me, I'm just going to focus much more on alts. But yeah, so we've got we had a 3-week demand that got hit once immediate, and then we got a second hit on it. It's got a 2-week just sitting on top of it, and then we made a weekly supply which got a rejection, and then it's had a second test rejection. So we're really bouncing between this weekly demand there, weekly demand here, weekly supply there, and then this supported by the 3-week. We had a little gap up there, so I was wondering if GDP would get another push today, but again this week just seems to be holding between those two levels. It's starting to look, it did make a 2-day demand, but it's starting to look a bit more bearish now, having come quite deeply into it. But we've got another day till that candle closes, because it still could close strong if it wants to. Or could just be a fake out, but you know, we're just having a week of range anyway, which isn't really helpful on the dollar right now. Yeah, so I was going to go into the majors on this video, but screen is out. I think I'll do the majors tomorrow, because that hopefully then this video won't be too long and it's a bit garbled already, because it's been a while since I've done a video. And also maybe I can see a little bit more of whether these have a look at where Bitcoin is. Yeah, I can see a little bit more of whether these are going to break up, having hit those lows, and with Bitcoin having hit 3-week demand. I guess the only thing I will say just on the majors is I have again put some more aggressive short entries in. So I mean, everything is really, let's just go to the daily. So we've got EOS, BCH, Ripple, Litecoin. As you saw, I mean, they're very similar structures to what we saw on the others' dominance charts. You know, except these are still in that low range. Short entries have on the whole been working out pretty well. A little bit of wick through, or some going a bit higher. EOS and Ripple did make a 2-week supply, so I put bigger shorts both on those, but they both came quite a lot higher in. So now I want to see if this 2-day is going to hold here on EOS. Ripple was a bit messier and had already tested on a daily, so I didn't put an alert on that. Also had an alert on the 2-day for a short on Litecoin, which has gone. And similarly on BCH. So slightly more bearish on these, but again, it's all local structures within range, and you know, you can see we are still in a higher low pattern locally, so it's still possible that these are going to finally run and do the bigger moves up to those bigger supplies that I've shown you at the top previously, but it's just been incredibly slow. But the trend lines have made me more, not confident, but more think that it's more worth looking at trying to get short entries as well as long entries. I haven't really looked much at longs since the lows, because there hasn't really been giving me a great deal. And we've been going into supply, so it's kind of hard given the more recent trend is down. If we're hitting supplies at the high of the last down move, I don't want to be looking for longs right into those, so I've left more less aggressive longs at the lows, like in this case BCH, but we haven't gone back there. So yeah, they haven't gone very far at all. And then yeah, quickly again on the other majors, BNB, we had longs off these lows. I put a trend line alert. If we break down that trend line, we had a short here that I've talked about previously. I think it was on a 5-day supply, and then there was a 3-day just above that hadn't got tested, but by that time I had also commented we'd hit 3-week demand, so it doesn't really surprise me that that one failed. This has a 3-day supply as well, but I'm leaving it alone because it's got weekly demand. So again, it's on the cusp. If this does break up, I do expect it to do a decent move, but I mean, it's just so slow, so I haven't really got the patience to kind of watch it all the time. Link was one of the only ones actually that did get up to my short level that I've had previously, so 2 week supply there has just hit. So again, just watching whether we're going to get a breakdown off that or not. It's got a 3-day demand below, and I put a 2-day alert in there. It's a bit more aggressive, and then we've also got a weekly demand down there that's alerted. But even again with this, I still would have liked it to properly hit demand down here. MATIC, similar. I had a daily short alert when it was quite a big zone, went a bit higher into it, but then did play out, but again hasn't broken local demand. Added a new short entry there. And ADA, much the same. Very nice short entry at the top there, and this has come down deeper, but again has this 4-day demand in here. So again, looking for whether this 2-day supply is going to give a reaction. I did have an alert up here at this. Be aware on the ADA, actually there is a 12-hour supply up here. So, another cigarette. There is another 12-hour supply up here actually, so this could still run through and retest higher, but like I had the alert up there, it didn't get tested, so I pulled it down just to be slightly more aggressive. That was just while Bitcoin was looking like it might break down. Yeah, so that's just showing you some of the new entries on those again. So ADA, long if we get down there. So all of these are risky entries within range. Long if we get down there, short if we get up here. There is a 5-day before this weekly. This has quite a bit of chop above. I need to look at these properly, so again I'll look at them and do a proper analysis on these tomorrow, but just to show you some immediate entries, just if we get a mini pump today and then manage to get new shorts. So ADA there, MATIC there, so MATIC again, still could go either way, a bigger triangle if it comes down, looking for those tests of the lows if we do get the fall off the trend line. And then finally, DOT, Sol, near and Atom. So DOT, again, I had hopes that this was going to break out, but eventually not. Still has weekly demand that was unable to break out past that high, but still holding a 4-5 day demand in there. So again, it's just indecisive. Sol seems to be picking up pace again now. I had this alert here on 12-hour or 8-hour supply up there. Again, didn't get tested before, so we can now see if that gets a test now and whether it reacts. Near was probably more disappointing for me because I really thought this was going to give a breakout, so I had an alert on the trend line here, but it broke out and just came straight back in. It had a 2-day demand there, but barely got any traction off it, and now just back in this weekly. And again, they're weak zones, but you know, if the market's doing well, then weak zones shouldn't matter. Then they will push, but the market wasn't. Market decided that this was the point, it was just going to go sideways and retrace a bit more, so hence these things have come back down. This now has a 3-day supply as well, but due to weekly demand, again, I'm not looking to short in there right now. And finally Atom. So Atom, yeah, I threw myself off on this. I think I was just getting very torn between being bullish and bearish. So we were in a 6-month demand, so I was bullish on that basis. But then for some reason I deluded myself into thinking that the BTC pair was nice, and I obviously got that wrong because I then looked back at it and I was like, what was I thinking? It looks horrendous. And yeah, so at that point is when I was looking for these longs in here, but then we just, while we did hold the higher low, we went very, very deep and didn't hold the aggressive entries. At this point I realised I didn't like the BTC pair, so I threw in a daily supply short up there, which really worked out quite well for a scalp. But now also it seems to be starting to pick up again, so I need to go back and look at those BTC pairs. But again, the trend line. But yeah, still to remember that this and MATIC are both in 6-month demand, so could, if they start looking ready to take off, really try and get in those. Anyway, that's just a quick whiz through of the new and old majors, and I've almost been an hour on this video now, so it's about time I stopped. So I'll do a proper alt update tomorrow on these majors, and maybe look at some other stuff if anybody's getting requests. again, I don't want to spend hours and hours on it, but I'll just have a quick look at the BTC pairs. But yeah, everything's just mixed up and messy. But the ones I've looked for, I'm looking for shorts on, are the ones that still have this sort of weekly or 2 weekly supply right above price. So I think it's still worth looking for shorts, and similarly, it's worth looking for longs on the ones that have weekly demand. But similar to Bitcoin, we've got these 3-day supplies. So unless Bitcoin's now going to run through this 3-day supply entirely, okay, I can see we've gone a bit deeper into that zone and taken out that high. Let me have a quick look on this chart. Okay, so we're up in that first 4-hour zone, taken out the high, which doesn't really surprise me. But yeah, we'll start looking at what reaction we're going to get here, or if this is just going to keep going now. See if that 3-week demand plays out. Okay, so I think that's all for now. Oh, I can see somebody's actually just joined the stream. Hello, whoever you are. I'm just finishing up, but I will try and do another stream tomorrow. I just really wanted to run through this for anybody, for the high time frames, for anybody who hasn't really been following me, and mainly also just get my head around a few things and where we're at. But if I do more streams, I become more familiar, so things are a bit easier. Anyway, I hope that's of some help. I've given you all the levels of interest, and trade safe. Let me know if you have any questions in chat, etc., etc. Ciao for now.